Hello, everyone. It is Jennie and Laurie of AstroPath. Do all the things. Subscribe, like, make comments, do all those things. And now we're going to just jump immediately into a conversation, quick down and dirty conversation about the upcoming Libra full moon.
That's right.
What's the date of that? Actually, that spans 2 dates, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
in Eastern time zone, it's right after midnight. So it's really April 5th or April 6th, depending on where you live.
Yeah, it really straddles that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking at a Libra full moon. This is the counterpoint to Aries and the very self-oriented focus of Aries season. The new moon in Aries, just because we're talking about a cycle here, was on March 20th. And then here we're going to have this full moon. The 6-month cycle, do you have that date for that new moon in Libra?
No.
I don't either. That's fine. We'll get that for you. But anyway, this is a cycle. So we're at the full moon part, which is when you're talking about the plant cycle, which we like to correlate this to. You've planted the seed, it's broken through the soil, the plant's growing, and now at the full moon, it's flowering. So this is the flowering phase where you really get to see the fruits of your actions for the last couple of weeks. And 6 months ago, if you're talking about that cycle. So yeah, that's what we're
Right. Yeah. So a full moon is always a celebration. It's a celebration of what you planted 2 weeks ago and how it has grown, or what you planted 6 months ago, for that cycle. So now we can see where we're at. That's the whole thing. The full moon, with the sun on one side of us here on Earth and the moon on the other side, we look up in the sky and we can see the whole disk of the moon, and it's beautiful and it's lovely, and we all want to celebrate, and we can see the reality of where we've come. So, all full moons also always relate to relationship, right? Don't they? It always has something to do with relationship. And this one between Aries and Libra is even more so, because Aries is such a self-focused sign, and Libra is such a relationship, cooperation kind of focused sign. So it really does bring in these ideas and thoughts and shifts around our relationships with other people.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, the Libra full moon is just saying, hey, don't forget about everybody else. It's just a reminder of the relationships that support you. And in astrology, that might come about in a bunch of different areas of your life, which we will talk about. But first, let's show that chart of the moment of the full moon. So you can see there's quite a bit of Aries in this chart. The sun is at 16 degrees Aries, right between Chiron and Jupiter. And then the moon is right across there in Libra, at 16 degrees of Libra. So that's the polarity. Very much Aries self. I'm doing my things. I'm standing courageously. I'm figuring out where I need to stand my ground and take autonomous action. And then the Libra moon comes around and says, hey, don't forget how many people have supported you, or who you can rely on for support. What sorts of relationships, because we're really in relationship with everything. We live in a web of relationships with people, with our environment, with other beings. I mean, there's a whole thing going on here. So this is what it really, really highlights.
Yeah, and that it's really interesting to me to look at that sun right at the moment here of this full moon, that the sun is sitting with Jupiter on one side and Chiron on the other. So you talked about it when we were initially having a conversation. You talked about it as, the royalty of the sun having its two trusted advisors on each side. You've got you can think of Jupiter as, it's how we expand our understanding of the world. It's also our belief system. Jupiter is often referred to as the priest that brings in, the beliefs. And then Chiron on the other side, the wounded healer. So there's so much that this Aries we've been so focused in this area. It's about us, it's about our beliefs, it's about where we've been wounded, how we've healed that, and how we go forth from there. And yet Yeah, the danger in Aries is getting so stuck in self.
Mhm.
And this full moon just shows us, pay attention, look out, get a perspective from outside of yourself.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
that's
pretty
where you're
much.
really going to learn a lot. And that's what you
Yeah.
really want to celebrate right now is a perspective outside yourself.
Yeah. It is funny, with the sun sitting right between Jupiter and Chiron. Like normally the sun in Aries is just go and burn, like be bright and burn it up, you know. But with this setup like that, it's kind of saying, hey, you need to work with some of the inner work, which is very unusual for Aries, in order to expand. Like you can't do one without the other. And that's a pretty strong statement about that, which I think is really unusual for Aries season. So and I mean, also Jupiter, you wouldn't be able to see it in the sky right now because it's right up against the sun, so it's kind of invisible, which is an interesting way to think about it. Also underscores that message of like, hey, you got to kind of contend with the wounds that you have and work with healing. And part of that at the full moon is okay, well, you got to look outside yourself and look at the relationships you have and attend to those relationships,
Mhm.
nourish those relationships. So,
I think
yeah.
that's pretty simply the statement here. I mean, we could go into a lot of different little details and things, but I don't know that we need to. Is there anything, do we need to just talk about Libra more?
Perhaps we should talk a tad more about. It's a good point, actually, because what is Libra? I mean, Libra wants harmony. Libra wants things to be peaceable. It wants things to be balanced. That is overall, that's what you think of a Libra. I mean, it does have a little bit of the devil's advocate face to it as
Mhm.
well. Like when things are I don't know, feel too heavily weighted in one direction, Libra kind of comes in and throws a bomb into the room to kind of I mean, I think there's something to that. And that speaks to the cardinal part of the sign. It is a cardinal sign. So it wants to start things. It's not going to just sit there. It wants to switch things or start things as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece of Libra. People think of Libra as, oh, peace and harmony and beauty and all these wonderful things. Well, Libra's a really interesting sign. That's the way it looks. It looks like peace and harmony and all these wonderful things. But really, yes, it's a cardinal sign. It's going to stir things up. It's going to get things started. It's also an air sign. And people miss that a lot with Libra. You know, when you are thinking about Libra and you're thinking about peace and harmony and all these beautiful things, you might be tempted to think about, how sweet and the heart. And no, this is an air sign. It comes from the intellect. It comes from the intellect's ability to create harmony. It's about diplomacy, intellectual diplomacy, not all this sweet niceness. It's very different than what it initially appears on the surface, I think.
Yeah. I do think one of the challenges for a Libra moon in particular, though, is the struggle around wanting it to have a pretty face, wanting everything to look wrapped up in a bow. And I think that that's where the pitfall comes. That's where it can kind of fall into that, especially in like a natal chart, that more kind of like simpering, like trying to just make everything look great, even when there's a lot of stuff going on underneath. So I think that like kind of like the band-aid over the wound, it's like tries to hide it a little bit. So that's one of the challenges around Libra, I think. And but I just feel like with a Libra full moon, it's like paying homage to those relationships and giving them some energy of yours.
Yeah, I think one other thing I'm going to throw in here is the fact that Libra moon is ruled by Venus, which right now is in Taurus.
Hmm.
And I think that's a good thing to pay attention to. The Libra moon being that intellectual moon, really. And yet it's ruled by Venus in Taurus. So, maybe there's just some real simplicity to tap into here at this
Yeah.
this this full moon, to tap into kind of the sensual side of the relationships as well.
Yeah, and to me, this sort of says something. Well, how do we nourish our relationships? Well, you take a practical action. You take your person, you say, let's go for a walk in the woods. It's something really tangible that you can, you set a date, you go and do something, and but it's a simple something. I think it
Right.
speaks to that is a
Yeah.
tangibility to whatever it is that you're doing to look after that relationship or those relationships.
Yeah, take a walk in the woods, get or give a massage, cook a meal together, just, yeah, very simple, grounded, kind of sensual based activities would be really helpful in relationship. And I just wonder how many people have experienced in this last few weeks this total self-focus and realizing that, yeah, this is a time to bring in the other. Boy,
Yeah.
I know that's true in my life right now.
Yeah, same for me. Well, I think we're ready to move on to the individual impacts, right?
Okay, let's
I
do
just
that. Let's
stopped
take
sharing
a
that.
look.
Okay, so
Okay. So
let's
let's open this up and we'll take a look at, first of all, those of you with Aries rising. Well, this is just so simple. We can just wrap it up easily. The focus has been on self. No kidding. The focus has been very much on the self, on what you believe, what your wounds are, what you want and need. And at this moment, at this point in time of this full moon, you really need to pay attention to who you're in relationship with. You really need to celebrate that relationship through these simple things that we were just talking about. Simple activities. Go for a walk with your partner, cook a
yeah,
meal together.
yeah, this one's kind of like how you relate to your relationship. I
Yeah.
mean, this really is looking at your primary partnerships, whatever those may be, your intimate ones, but also your business partners, and also any other kind of one-on-one interactions where there's an exchange. But I do think it's interesting to note that having Chiron as well as Jupiter with that sun, I mean, you think about where you've been expanding, where you've been contracting, what is the issue that's been taking up so much of your attention, and then lean in on the support of these other partners in your life that are helping you. So
Yeah.
that's
And
kind of it.
this falls, April 6th is a Thursday, is that right?
Yeah.
That's right. So this really impacts the upcoming weekend. Make a plan. Make a plan to spend some simple time with a partner. Get a perspective outside of yourself. Bottom line, that's what is needed, is a perspective outside of yourself.
Yeah.
All right, ready to move on. Those of you with Taurus rising, wow, your perspective needs to be stretched as well. Obviously, at this full moon, we all need to look at something outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And for those of you with Taurus rising, your focus has been so much on yourself, but on a very internal part of you. With that Aries in your 12th house, you've been really focused on your own internal processes.
Yeah. I know it's interesting having Aries in that 12th house. I
Mm.
know I'll probably say that every time we have Aries season, but it does speak to some part of yourself that's hard to get at. It's hard to access. It's sort of buried and not quite where you think it would be. So there is something around those issues, and especially with Chiron there too, and Jupiter, it really has placed a strong focus on whatever those subconscious patterns are that make you feel isolated, that make you feel cut off. And so now at the full moon is a beautiful opportunity to really reach out outside of yourself and reach into those relationships that are going to help support your routines and your practices, which is the full moon is in the 6th house of all of those things that you do to help your health, to support yourself. And that includes your really mundane routines, like how you get to work, like do you pack a lunch? I mean, things like that, very simple. So it's kind of a relief from all of that, like, behind the scenes, intense work in yourself. Great time to reach out. I also think about health care practitioners being here, like go get a massage,
Mhm.
go do some, if you can, get some body work, some energy work, acupuncture, something like that to help you along in this area.
Yeah, or get a friend to go biking with you, or yeah, using a connection with another to get out of your head into your body, taking some action with another person, whether it be getting on the massage table and getting a massage for yourself, or grabbing a friend and going for a hike. You've got to get your perspective out of that internalized area where it's been for a
Yeah.
while now.
Yeah. And for some reason, it's popped in my head too. Like if you are like, hey, I'm going to go get a massage or something like that, you can also think about like you're supporting someone else's business,
Mm.
so there's an element to that in the sixth house that this is not just, deeply personal. This is how you also interact with the things around you. So just thought I would add that.
Excellent. Okay, so now for those of you with Gemini rising, what
Mhm.
does this look like to you, Jenny?
Oh, well, let's see. So with Gemini rising, that means that the Aries season focus has been very much about how you are in the context of your community, your groups. I'm just going to throw in a sports reference for those of you who watch March Madness. This might have been a time when you were sitting around hanging out with your friends watching basketball, which is a really great thing to think of. Because right now that full moon is in your fifth house. So now is the opportunity to sort of reverse that flow and think about where can you give of yourself to help support that group context. Because the 11th house is so much about how they support you and how you receive the love of your community. And then that fifth house brings in, well, it's the opposite. Now you get to kind of give of yourself. So where do you want to do that?
It's really interesting. Yeah, your focus has been on receiving from the outside world. And at this full moon, your job is to get out of that perspective and see what you can give back. A shared activity of giving back, though. It's not like, because it's Libra in that fifth house, maybe you and a friend can create something to give back to your community, something fun and pleasurable in
Yeah.
that area.
And I mean, also at fifth house, we always can't help but bring it up. I mean, this is where you're playful. This is where you tap into that kind of joviality and enjoyment. And I always think about just little kids. I actually like saw a dance performance over the weekend, and just seeing little kids perform and the joy that that can bring. Whether you have kids or not has nothing to do with it. It's tapping into that joyful energy because that's what they show you. So I like that.
Yeah, I love that polarity between the fifth and the 11th. It's just really a wonderful thing. You've got this area where you receive from others and this area where you give, and that's where the polarity is showing up here, and getting outside of your kind of stuck perspective where you've been for the last couple of weeks in that receiving area so that you can give to others.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to those of you with Cancer rising. Oh, your focus has been all about work, hasn't it, Jenny?
Yes, work, work, work. That is for sure. I mean, anyone with Cancer rising, your focus has fully been on how you work, how you want to expand, how you want to heal those wounds so that you can operate well at work. That's what kind of the Chiron Jupiter Sun conjunction Aries brings to mind. But you have maybe forgotten perhaps about the family members that support you. So now is a good time to think about that, is to enjoy your family, spend time with them, give them some attention, do something fun over this upcoming weekend with family members. And that can be parents, it can be, family of origin, it can be your unit, like with children and so on, if you have kids, whatever else. But that is definitely the invitation that's being posed here.
Yeah. Yeah. Get a perspective away from your career. You've been so focused there. Get a perspective from those in your home area. That's lovely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So next we're going to move on to those of you who have Leo rising. And your focus, those of you with Leo rising, you've been so focused on the outer world, your world view, how you see your culture, those kind of big ideas. And there's been, with Chiron and Jupiter and the sun there right now, that, how are you feeling wounded by your culture? How are you feeling expanded by your culture? How has that taken up all your focus in these last few weeks? At this full moon, you need to step aside, step outside of all of that, which you've probably been kind of a little bit hot under the collar in that area, And you need to just step outside of that and find I don't know, I don't know. I'm stuck there, Jenny. What do we need?
Well,
What do we
I
need to
think
do
what
in that
you're
third house?
where you're
Read
headed
a
to,
book.
this is where you have ordinary conversation with ordinary people. So you've been up there in the ninth house with Aries, like maybe you've been enrolled in school and your head is just really in these bigger picture, lofty ideas, which is awesome. Great place to be. But that full moon is bringing you back down to earth and kind of saying, hey, hold on. What about the nuts and bolts? Like, what about the basics of how you learn? Or what about the ordinary conversation with somebody who's just on the street, your neighbor? I mean, I think that that's really what it's saying. I mean, also you can think about siblings and close friends in that third house. So it certainly brings up the idea of maybe you just need to have a conversation with a buddy because you haven't done that in a while. You know, you've been so focused on these bigger picture things. I think it's something about that. Like
Yeah,
bring
I
it
think
back
that
down to the ordinary.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
perfect. Because the full moon does bring in the relationship thing, and the relationships of the third house are siblings, neighbors, the person at the grocery store, those simple things. And yeah, getting outside of all this heaviness of your worldview and finding out, what your neighbor is having for dinner.
Yeah, and the third house also refers to movement and transport. Like just, ride your bike down to the corner store and, something like that. Like,
Yeah,
let it
simple.
be light and fun.
Get out of all that heavy stuff in your head. Okay. There you have it with Leo rising. Now we're going to move on to Virgo rising. Oh dear, Jenny, tell me, what do I need to think about?
Oh, Laurie. Well, anyone with Virgo rising, you've had that Aries focus in the eighth house, which means that you've been navigating other people's stuff, like maybe people coming at you with their issues, their struggles, and you've been kind of going, "Oh, I don't really want to deal with this right now. I just want to do what I want." And that's fine. That's what the focus is. But here at the full moon, you're having to think about something else. You're directing your attention away from all the other people's stuff and just kind of bringing it back to the simplicity of your own values and how you value yourself. And I mean, even though it's funny, we're talking about getting out of yourself, but this is at the same time like go buy yourself an ice cream at the store. I mean, this is something about treating yourself in how you value yourself because that's what the second house is about. So don't be afraid to spend some money. But because we're thinking about relationships, you've got to think about, I don't know, bringing a little more generosity into that. So go ahead and buy the second ice cream for your friend.
I think there is something about generosity in there.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you brought that up, but I do think that, yeah, your focus, those of you with Virgo rising, you have been so focused on your ability to, this is how I would think of it, your ability to navigate those deep, intense things that other people bring to you. Like, yeah, and just, yeah, that's where the focus has been. And you've got to pull out of that focus and go to, yeah, what makes you feel okay?
Yeah, or maybe it's also like, who are the people that make you feel good about yourself? And this is not
Yes.
in a shallow way. This is really the
Yes.
people who make you feel valued. Spend time with them. And it's a funny interplay because we're trying to distinguish between taking care of other people and not just thinking about yourself. But we all have to deal with our own self-worth issues. And this is like, be around people you enjoy being around for this period. I think
Yeah,
it's
I like that you brought
yeah.
that up, because the second house really does bring up the people who make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, and I could go off on a tangent talking about that, but I will resist it. And those of you with Virgo rising, Jenny has just given us permission to have 2 ice cream cones.
That's right.
I'm going for it, man. This weekend, I'm going for ice cream. Okay, now we're going to go on to those of you with Libra rising. Oh, and this is just, a flip from the very first one, obviously. The focus has been on relationship. You have been really focused on what's important to you, what expands your understanding of relationship, where you've been wounded and healed in relationship. And at this full moon, you really need to pay attention to yourself. Your
Yeah, it's kind of
relationship
funny.
with yourself has to come into focus.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny with Libra rising because it flips the chart so that suddenly, as a Libra rising person, your primary focus on yourself is actually through other people. So there's always a quandary here with the Libra rising, like how do you, focus on what you need for you and not give yourself away in relationship, because that's such a Libra thing. With Libra rising, the tendency to give oneself too much to others can be an issue,
Mhm.
and part of it is because that's your life path, having this very autonomous, fiery energy in your seventh house. There is a huge question for anyone with Libra rising around that. How do I cooperate with others, but not give myself away?
Mhm.
It really is about finding that fulcrum, that midpoint where you're balancing both ends of this, where you're, enjoying a relationship, but you're also being autonomous enough. And it is a fundamental question here.
Yeah, it's an interesting little flip for those of you with Libra rising.
Mhm.
So, bottom line, take care of yourself. Pay attention to what you need. Um,
Yeah,
get a
reach.
different perspective.
Yeah, I was saying, if you need to reach out for support, reach out for support. This is a very clear statement about that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, this is about becoming more self-aware and letting the full moon help you do that.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to move on to those of you with Scorpio rising.
Mm.
And this puts the stress, the focus of the last few weeks has been in your sixth house. You've really had so much focus in that area. And with Jupiter and Chiron there, you're focused on your health, possibly your day-to-day routines, how you function in that way. And at this full moon, you got to kind of go into a quieter place.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I was thinking that maybe some folks with Scorpio rising, you may have had a really intense last few weeks of like just really having to go, 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 go. Because that Aries energy is very hot and it's being activated. And in the place of routines, I think it's pretty hard to feel, that you're on an even keel, and pretty easy to
Mm.
overdo it and drain yourself and be in the stress zone. So I think the full moon really brings in, like, guess what? You get a pause because the 12th house is all about retreat. So take advantage of that full moon to just take a break, even if it's just for a half hour over the weekend. It's for you, so something like that. And then guess what? That allows you to show up better for other people. If you take that moment, you're not on burnout. So that's just kind of what I was thinking about. And I can
I
think of a
like
couple examples like that.
I like that you brought up a retreat. And because it's a full moon and it so often, will bring up the Aries Libra, it's relationship and getting a different perspective. This perspective could come from, a teacher, a therapist,
Hmm.
uh, something along those lines could give you the perspective on how you are functioning day to day. You might need that kind of a change of focus.
Yeah. And I mean, I think too, the retreat idea, sometimes you have to sign up for a yoga workshop to get a retreat where you get your own retreat in a group of people. I think that's a very 12th house thing, that you go and I mean, literally, you could sign up for a yoga workshop this weekend. That would be the perfect way of working with these two energies, if that's your bag, if that's something you like to do. Um, yeah.
I love that you said if that's your bag.
Yeah.
That's great, Jenny. Yeah, and if it's not, there's many other things that you could probably fit in there. You might need to just buy yourself some self-help book and sit in the sunshine somewhere and go inside and get a perspective on your day-to-day routine life by going internally in one way or the other, whether it's a yoga class or a retreat for the whole weekend or a self-help book or something. Okay,
Yeah. All
enough
right.
said. Now we're going to move on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. Oh, this is back to one of our favorite polarities, isn't it?
Yep. Well, I guess I'll pick that one off. So with
Yeah.
Aries in the fifth house, this is a Sagittarius rising person. There's a real need to burn off fire through something creative, whether that's dance or some sort
Mm.
of art thing that you're working on, or some way that you get to go and play and just have unbridled playtime is something that's very important for stress relief. So it's also a place where you just get to just give of yourself. I mean, think about being in that joyful space where you just get to express, and it's just an absolute joyful expression. That's where your energy's been for the last few weeks. And now with that Libra full moon, it's like a reminder of, hey, and there's a whole community out there that wants to celebrate you, that wants to, lift you up and offer you love for the things that you're doing, the way you participate in community.
Mm.
So,
That's lovely. Yeah, it's like the focus has been on you having fun, being creative, all of that fifth house. And probably working with some challenging energies there as well, but it's been very creative. And yeah, this really brings your focus into community. So
yeah.
yeah, allowing yourself to just get out of that solitary place
Hmm.
of creativity and into a community space.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's what you've got to do this weekend. You've got to go to a party, go to a gathering of some sort,
Go
get a
dance.
perspective from outside.
Yeah,
Okay.
love it.
All right. Now we're going to move on to those of you with Capricorn rising. What's happening here, Jennie?
Oh, with Capricorn rising, it just seems like there's been a lot of focus about your roots, your foundation. It could be your family life and parents and so on. But nonetheless, some work here where you've had to take some action on your own foundation. The Libra full moon is a reminder, be like, hey, you know what? Go out in your professional world and celebrate the folks that allow you to have the profession that you have. This might be your colleagues. It could be authority figures at your workplace. Nonetheless, a time to just, I don't know, a sense of gratefulness comes in here because you've been working on that foundation so much that this is a reach outside of yourself and to think about your impact in society, which is the 10th house.
Mhm.
Something about that.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, your focus has been so much on home and family, and you've got to really open up at this point and get the perspective of how people see you in the outer world,
Hmm.
pulling yourself out of that internal space and seeing your
Yeah.
perspective from outside.
It's like, I just think about collaboration too, like in the workplace. There's so much stuff around collaboration. Like, we can't do any of this alone. Even if you work for yourself, by yourself, there's, you got to have interactions with clients. You can have interactions with other people, do the work that you do, and so on and so forth. So it's a good time to celebrate that.
Absolutely. Celebrate that. Okay. Um, Now, if you have Aquarius rising, your focus during the last few weeks has been in the third house. And that's really how you communicate. The people that the third house refer to are your siblings or neighbors, people that you just aren't really super close to necessarily, but are a part of your everyday life. And you've had a lot of focus in that area over the last few weeks, and you need to get a new perspective. At this full moon, the perspective comes from the outer world, but kind of worldview, bigger ideas, maybe travel, maybe it's a time that you need to travel or go to some cultural event that just kind of opens your mind and opens you into seeing those day-to-day um, communications from a different light.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, Aquarius rising is that's an air sign. And then here you have this Libra, this other air sign in the place of your worldview and expanding your mind. So this is very imaginative. I mean, this is a very social placement, so you really get an opportunity here to kind of celebrate those teachers and bear in mind that teachers could be a foreign country, teachers could be a textbook, it could be a degree that you have. It can be any number of things that open up your mind, and that's where your focus is going to be. I mean, it's almost like if you own a small business, I was kind of thinking like the Aries is like your self promotion, where you've been putting out all these little blurbs about your business and all the things that you're doing. And then this full moon gets to, I don't know, it asks you, I guess, to remind yourself of all the clients and the people that you're doing that work for, the bigger picture, for positive impact. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, you need to get that bigger perspective on those details of your communications. Like that. Okay. So
Okay.
now we're going to move on to those of you with Pisces rising. Your focus has been for the last few weeks, you've been really focused on your own self-worth. Possibly your focus has been on money, making money, how you make it, how you spend it, what you do with it, what your resources are. There's been some real strong focus there. And at this full moon, you've got to really remind yourself that there is a perspective outside of your resources. There are other people's resources that can support you. And that's really a lot of what I see here is just, you've got to get that perspective. What is available to you from others?
Yeah. I like that you brought up the resources context, because I do, the second and the eighth house very much refer to resources. And the second are your own resources, as you've been saying, like your own, like what are your own values and resources that you bring to the table. But that eighth house is the shared values. And often there's some conflict there, because you have to kind of bump up against other people's values and they may not be in line with yours, and it's kind of uncomfortable. And that's part of the whole conflict of the eighth house. It's really interesting here with Libra on the eighth house. I mean, it on one hand, it's saying, hey, you got to get collaboration from other people. Like you got to, kind of cut through the conflict and get people's support and help and work together. On the other hand, I could see Libra in the eighth house kind of being the rollover. Okay, I just want peace, so I'm not willing to stand up. So there's a cautionary tale around that, I think, with the second and eighth house. It's not the easiest placement to have this, really.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting,
see
but
what
it
comes
really
up.
does, yeah, separating yourself outside of your values and seeing the perspective from others. But it's an interesting placement for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that wraps us up. Is there anything else you want to say, Jenny?
No, I think we're golden.
All
So
right.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back to do more of these in the very near future.
Yes, thank you very much.